Hey, good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I appreciate you guys checking out my day job here. I'm actually in the process of figuring out how I am going to fit this new piece of equipment here in the workshop. Um, I have a two-car garage here that I have actually a lot of big pieces of equipment. I've got a 3 horsepower shaper, I've got a 2 horsepower bandsaw, I have a radial arm saw, I've got a table saw, I've got a 6-inch joiner, I've got a dual drum 24-inch thickness sander, I have an edge sander, I have a pocket hole jig, and I even have a 3 horsepower Oneida dust collector in the corner, and various other smaller tools that do just about anything. So I finally bit the bullet, and I have purchased a Inventables um, CNC machine. I'm gonna step into the 21st century here and try something new. And the one that I got is actually the Pro, which is a lot more expensive than their excuse me regular X-Carve. This one you can actually, it's a 2x4 bed on it, so you can put a full sheet of plywood in with it, and you can do what's known as tiling. So let's say you do a whole cabinet layout for a whole sheet of plywood. You can put the piece of plywood in the first 2x4, it'll cut that. You can slide it through, it'll orientate itself to go ahead and continue to do that. And so I'll be able to actually use this to make cabinets, which is going to be great, as well as engraving and custom work, and even cutting out like my footballs and things. So I'll be able to do a lot more things that I couldn't do before. And the other nice thing about this is it will maximize the amount of materials that can be used. So it won't be as much scrap stuff as you have. Of course, the problem being is having that capability, you need to have a place to put it. So I've already started the process of reconfiguring my workshop, which hasn't changed in forever. Well, I did change the bandsaw. The bandsaw used to be over here, and I did move it over that way, so there is that change. Although that might be a possibility that it might come back over here on this other side too, but that's not my big issue. What I figured is the edge sander used to be right here. It used to sit right here and would come out about this far, which was fine because it's a nice little walkway here between the thickness sander that's over here and it. So, you can stand right here, I can sand things and stuff. Although, part of my problem was when I had a longer piece, the thickness sander, which I have moved down more, would get a little bit in the way. So now that I've actually moved it over here on the wall, I won't have that same issue. If I have a long piece that I want to turn and cut, I can put a support table over here and be able to do it. So this actually is going to make this more functional. This got slid down, and the nice thing about this is I can still run 8-foot pieces through the thickness sander on out the other side. I do have my old-fashioned wood lathe that's over there that I need to put the motor back in, but I don't really use the wood lathe so much. Trying to maximize the space that I had. The original base that I had for my 3 horsepower planer, I took off and I actually made this bed here for it, so that way it's up underneath of it. It's a pain in the rear end to have to bend down to it, but it saves a lot of floor space because it is underneath the table saw. So now I need 70 inches by 30 inches of space for the table. And what I figured is the center of the shop is going to be the main work area. So I will actually take the dust pipe here, and of course I've got wiring that's here, powering, going down and powering everything that's up underneath of here. I'll have to reroute that stuff, but it's going to go right here. That way, maybe about the same depth that I had for the edge sander will be here, but it'll be able to use the table saw tabletop to be able to support the pieces. Now, I don't have the exact dimensions on how tall the table will need to be for it, so that way it lines up. I've actually made a call to Inventables to see if I can find out what that is and go. So I'm going to do a couple of things. I put an extension on my table bar here So that way I could rip up to 34.5, which is key because that's the width of a top of, the length of a top of a cabinet. So I can put a whole sheet of plywood across there and do that. But now, with having the Inventables, I can basically use that as a cross-cut saw. I can put the sheet of plywood in here, zip, cut it. So it behooves me to make sure that I have at least 34.5 inches of space on the other side of this. Enter my conundrum here of what to do. I still have my joiner, which I use very, very rarely. And I have this outfeed table that really becomes like an assembly table. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrap that assembly table and I'm going to build a new one. I'm going to slide the joiner down a little bit further this way, because then what I can do is it'll go past the table saw and the outriggers for it can go underneath of the table saw. So that way the table saw will basically go on top of where the joiner is. Still makes the joiner usable, but cuts down on the profile. And I'll slide the table saw over there. I've got about 10 more inches. So 10 more inches will add on there. The other thing I really don't want to do is, but I'm going to need to do, is basically I'm going to make the table saw so I can only rip 24. I'm going to go ahead and take the fence down to where it's 24, take this extension that's off of here off, and basically cut the pipe on here. So that way the new table for the invertibles will basically start about here. So it will fit in here just about like this. And then hopefully it'll all work where I can come in the door there with the sheet of plywood, sit it down on the table, slide it in, be able to cut it and use it. The thing that I like so far is just moving the sanding table down there and moving that over there has made this area right here a lot bigger space-wise. I do have a lot of portable tools. And here's the other problem. I have a lot of portable tools that I use on the site in toolboxes. So I've got to organize this a little bit better so it's more usable. I had a cabinet that used to be there. For the moment, I've moved it over here so that way I can still use it and stack up some of the stuff. But when I build this new cabinet for the Inventables, I may end up just making it so it's like a full cabinet there and then get rid of this one because I won't need that per se. So we're trying to figure out how we can maximize every single inch in this space to make it as functional as possible, because I want to take this Inventables and I want to use it to the maximum amount that I can get out of it. So that's what we got, y'all. Time for me to get to work on this stuff. I've got to got power supplies that come down through here that I'm gonna have to kill because I've got to move the ductwork. I may end up having to put a junction box in the ceiling to get some more to put longer cables onto it, because I did have a 220 here for the thickness sander, and then I've got power that goes to the floor down there, and it may not be enough once I move the pipes and stuff there. So we'll get that. I'm gonna have to get some more material to start building the new work surface area that's gonna go over here. But this will be a good project to really make my workshop stand up and do a lot more things. The other good thing about this too is now I actually have more space where I can put stuff together than I had before, more floor space. All right, time to get to work.